Okay, let's do it.
Thanks for watching the MLS Fantasy Insider. Be sure to check out MLSFantasyBoss.com for more fantasy articles and come back here every Monday to listen to our next round preview. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show this week. As usual, we are getting everything ready with the social. But first, the thing everyone really came here for.
Recording in progress.
There we go. There we go. Saw Gene in the chat, knew that that we had to mention it. So there we go. Recording has started. So yes, the social is out on Twitter X and over on Blue Sky. Let me head over and do the pings over for the Discord. So like, I hope everyone knows that we're live right now, but you never know. You never know. Let's see here. I don't know if you all saw it last week, but we had that new little Captain's video short that came out on YouTube, just trying a few new things. Interested in seeing how people like that right there. And then a little just snippet of the interview that we did as well. So we'll try to do that a few times this year. See how it goes. Let's see here.
How'd that captain pick turn out for you?
I mean, the one I went with went well.
Yeah.
Some of the other options would not have worked out, but that's why they were a clear
100%.
2 and 3. I think we were pretty clear about that.
Yeah.
But I have some positive things to say about 2 of those 3 other options.
Okay.
Jason may have some positive things to say too about one of them. So we'll see. All right, there we go. So the social is out on Discord, Twitter X, and Blue Sky. So if you are seeing that, please do be so kind and like and reshare those. It helps so much with the interactions. And of course, if you are here for the first time on YouTube, like and subscribe, hit the bell notification. We pretty much are live every Monday. And I say pretty much because sometimes weird things happen with the fantasy schedule and we're not able to come and we adjust. But pretty much every Monday, we're going to be live giving you some feedback onto the previous round and our thoughts for the coming round that is going to be later in the week. So, yeah, if you like that content, we want you to watch. We want you to share. We want to get those interactions going. So, super fun. Happy to have you here.
Hey, Reid.
Yo.
I, per usual, really want to make this about myself, but will you fix me? Everyone says I look like I need a booster seat.
You do. Well, see, it's like that. Okay, let's see here.
How's fun?
How's this, everybody? Is that better, or do we need to like zoom in or do something more to get Ashley?
Do I need to change it? I feel bad.
Are you slouching, Ashley? Is that
no.
Let's see here. There we go. I think that's probably got it. How's that look, everyone? I think this should have it. I think this should have us right here. Yeah. Had some weird issues with the. She still needs a booster. I made it bigger, Shannon. I made it bigger, but she may still need a booster. We'll see.
I'm 5'7". I don't feel like I need to say that.
Now it's right now creeping into mine. No, let's see here.
Yeah.
Hold on. I gotta fix the other one. Jeez, what's going on here? This is there we go. That's gonna fix it so it's not creeping into my screen. That's got it.
That's fun. Was I like up?
Well, like the part of your scarves were covering the center area, so
that's
it was
less funny. I thought it was
No, it wasn't you. We got it. Okay, there we go. That's the shenanigans. Those are the behind the scenes things you all get to see when you tune in live to the stream. So we are now.
Reid.
I do what I can. We're now going to get started. Hello and welcome to the MLS Fantasy Insider, our preview of Round 2 of the 2025 MLS Fantasy season. This episode is brought to you by Charlotte FC's Player of the Week, Seattle's Jamar. Actually brought to you by our amazing MLS Fantasy Insider Patreon supporters. It's because of you that we are able to keep this project going. Thank you so much to everyone who joined our Pro Rel League. Please do check out patreon.com/MLSFI. You can still see the tiers that we have for support and the swag that you get associated with that. I know I'm behind in sending it out, but it's coming. I got it in the other room. It's there. So please do check that out if you want to support this project that we have. I'm your host, Reid Connolly from MLSFantasyBoss.com, and tonight I'm joined by my partner in fantasy, Ashley Needs a Booster Seat Savage. We'd also like to welcome our special guest, Jason Longshore, radio voice of Atlanta United on 92.9 The Game, and the Chief Soccer Officer of the Soccer Down Here Network. How you doing, everybody?
What's up? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Doing great.
Doing great, though. Yeah, those of you who didn't join the live stream, there was some funny shenanigans with Ashley's video, and the comment was made that she looked like she needed a booster seat, so just had to
I'm
slip
5'7", which is quite
that one.
tall
Right.
for a woman.
She was a keeper. It's all good. So, so we're super excited to have Jason Longshore with us tonight, going to put us all to shame with his radio voice compared to our voices.
Not going to put you to shame with my fantasy picks, but I can talk. Yes, I have that.
It's round
That's
one,
what we need.
and I think that's one thing for people. Like it's round one. We'll get into this, but this is the time when your early thoughts are being tested and the new trends are coming out. So plenty of time, lots of stuff that we learn. But before we get into that, I have a quick announcement. And then we're going to do a quick little chat with Jason just so you know more about him, and then we'll do our recap. So I promise, really quick. The announcement I want to say, though, this is for serious. I've seen several comments on Twitter about this, and people have been asking, why can't I edit my team? I've seen some people from England, or at least across the way over there in Europe, who have made comments saying, hey, I tried to edit my team as soon as this round started. That's a little different for MLS Fantasy. Is you won't have your team unlock until after everything's finalized. Normally that does happen on Monday after the weekend, because it takes a second just for those final adjustments to be made with a stats partner, and then any adjustments, usually a point or two here or there, depending on if you're playing Skylar or not in fantasy, and they get the finalized points out there for the final, and then everybody unlocks. That has not happened. Because even though Skylar's not doing his articles, he is still helping out with the back end of the system. He was out traveling out to Austin with his kids, seeing some of the sites with the opening game, checking his stadium off the list. So he's just gotten back into town, hasn't been able to get the stuff updated yet. It's coming. We expect that it'll get back to the normal schedule once after this round, but should be updated and unlocked by tomorrow. So going to be a little weird for making our picks tonight with having to bounce back and forth to figure out where things are, but that's because of the delay. Nothing crazy. I know people have been disappointed with some aspects of the game this year, but this is one that we can just chalk up to just some coordination, and we can let Skylar have his good time. So that's the update on that.
Skylar deserves time off.
He does. He gets a nice little time.
Yeah.
So with that being said, Jason, want to have a little chat with you, let people get to know you. Mostly, how long have you been calling Atlanta United matches?
Since game one. Every Atlanta United broadcast that has been in any capacity, I have called either for radio, did a couple games on TV back in the day of the Fox Sports South and Valley Sports South, preseason streams, Open Cup, Champions League, anything that's been broadcast that the club's been attached to, I've been on it one way or another. It's crazy.
That is amazing.
Into the 9th season.
Absolutely amazing. You are the Atlanta fan. The voice. Absolutely. That is so true. Well, I also want to talk about your experience with, we'll do fantasy in general, but specifically, what's your experience with the MLS fantasy game?
So I've been around it for, as long as I've, seen it available. I'm never that great at it. I think my problem is I'm always thinking more soccer on the field and thinking about players that I think are important and good. And I don't get as deep into, look, some players are better in fantasy than they might be on their team specifically. And that's sometimes hard for me to separate in my brain. So that's where I struggle. I also have always been a fantasy jinx. Like I It'll be the player, and I'll try not to do it to anybody today, but I apologize if I ruin anybody's career with somebody that I tell you to pick up, because I remember one time in fantasy baseball, this guy was coming off of a Rookie of the Year campaign. I think he was a shortstop for the Royals. I picked him. I'm like, all right, he's going to be my guy this year. He started having like weird headaches and never recovered to play on a regular basis in the major leagues again.
Wow.
I ruined the
Oh
man's
my
career.
God.
So I'm going to try not to do that with anybody tonight.
Did we
but I
screen
make no
Jason
guarantees.
properly
Yeah.
before we brought him on?
Should not have done this.
No,
I
no.
feel
That-
like
See, I have
don't
said
want
this
on my
before.
conscience.
No, I have said that everyone's gonna be fine. No one's gonna get jinxed. But I have said this
I hope
before.
not.
I find there a lot of value in being able to evaluate the soccer element of the game too. I mean,
Big
that's a great thing that Ranch is able to kind of take and move into his picks of like, oh, this matchup on this wing, everything's gonna be great. And so I find that incredibly valid. So like maybe Jason can't always convert it into the fantasy gold mine that
I'm
he wants it
very
to be.
hit or miss.
But
Very
that
hit or
knowledge,
miss.
but that knowledge can help influence. And at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do with this podcast. For people listening, it's not these are the picks you have to make. Go that it's here's some insights that we have. Here's some early trends that we're seeing, fantasy wise, but also on the field. And I think that's a great point of view to bring to a fantasy discussion.
Yeah, I need to learn from you guys too. Maybe I can win my match next week. I'm hoping after this show.
Well, what is your general approach to building a lineup? We talked about this last week too. Like, are you one of these who's like, I'm going to wait until like an hour before first kickoff and go, or do you do some research? Like, how do you approach it?
I do some research. I usually it goes along a little bit with like my week prep as well. So it's something I try to funnel into that. I usually am looking at it heavily in like the Thursday kind of time frame for a normal week where there's not midweek matches. I'm thinking Thursday because by that point, if anybody got banged up on the weekend, you usually have an update after coaches and players have spoken to the media during the week. So you might have a sense of this guy's back, this guy's not going to be back. So I kind of wait for that. I kind of look at the matchups as well. I look for matchups that I really like. That burned me this past week. There were a couple of teams that significantly let me down. LA Galaxy, I'm looking at you. It's just like I try to look at that, and then of course there's players that you're going to, even when they're on the road, even when they're in a tough matchup, you're probably going to lean that way. I should have captained Messi this past week. I didn't. I got a pretty good captain out of it with Miguel Almiron. I was a little biased, but he didn't get the goal that would have probably put me over the top. But pretty good start for Miggy. Pretty good start for Atlanta United. I should have captained Blate Lat, but I didn't think he'd have a brace in his debut.
No,
we'll talk about him in just a second too.
Yeah.
The last question I have, I shook it up a little bit because we're going to talk about players in a second. But the last question I have before we get into our recap is, what general advice would you give to all of the new fantasy players who are starting in 2025?
I think the biggest thing, like if you're new to it and you want to enjoy it and stay connected to it, is really create a league with friends and get into the good-natured conversation, trash talking around it. Like that's what will make it a really enjoyable experience. That's across all fantasy sports for me. Like the leagues that I really enjoy and have the most fun with, there's some trash talking involved. There's some back and forth involved of, oh, I can't believe you did that. What are you thinking? Oh, I wish I had done that one. Like that kind of stuff is what will keep you hooked and really make it more fun. So create that kind of scenario for yourself. In terms of the actual strategy to it, I think it's a lot of it is just staying in tune to maybe. I've noticed this in MLS over the past couple of years, and I don't think it'll be as bad this year with the game time spread out a little bit. Last year, I felt really disconnected from the Western Conference, being in the East and being locked into all the teams that I see and know and get to have a feel for. I didn't have a good feel for the West last year at all. So really try to, if you're going to take this super seriously, put in that time, maybe it's Sundays, maybe it's Mondays, going through the recaps, watching things back, trying to get a feel for the opposite conference from your team.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on that real quick because Reid hates Apple, so I just want to say something positive, which is I love the recap option
Yes.
it through Apple TV. And it was, you'd have to kind of YouTube and bounce around before Apple TV. And I understand if you're not, you don't have your iPhone tapped into your veins like I do, that it's been an adjustment, but that recap option has been so great. They do a decent job in the individual goals too, of like showing a little bit of the build up,
Yeah.
which I find really helpful because I feel a very similar way to you about the East, where a lot of times on a Saturday or Sunday, if I have any plan, I've missed every game. And those recaps are really helpful. So agree.
Yeah, that's a big one. I thought they did a good job with the majority of them that I've watched up to this point. I haven't gotten through
Yeah.
everything that I didn't see on Saturday. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's the other thing. Like for me, at times it's tricky because I'm calling games on,
Sure.
then doing a post game show, and like
Yeah.
Saturday. I mean, I wanted, because we play Charlotte next, I wanted to watch Charlotte and Seattle as much of it as I could live. I'm really super connected to the game when I'm watching it live. I didn't get home until the 60th minute from the stadium after everything. So I watched it, went back and watched the recap. Now I'm going to watch that again. Like those kinds of things are so important. I like how they cut the stuff this year. I do think that Sunday night show after the Sunday night soccer game is going to be really helpful to stay connected to the entire league. The wrap-up show with Kevin Egan and Dax McCarty, who was here last year, who's great so far in everything I've seen, with Sasha Kleshin and Bradley Wright Phillips. I think you're going to get a really good, like, bite-sized show to bounce around the entire league and all the storylines you need to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey,
and
I am a happy guy
this year.
Yeah. I like that there's more times. I like that, Sunday I could, just the way my day went, I was able to watch the entire Portland-Vancouver game. I was able to watch a good bit of the Galaxy San Diego game, even though I was very angry because my fantasy team was let down by the LA Galaxy.
Ooh,
very
I told you guys. You didn't listen to me last week.
Hey,
I should have.
There's so two things. One, I'm a happy guy because I've got an Android app now for streaming, so it's all good. And two,
yes, you have that.
The number one rule with the way this show works and the way we approach fantasy, with what I want to see on Twitter, anything interacting, is if you spoke up to it the previous week, by golly, you get to own it. And so, yes, you get to brag if you were there. But if you just like, well, I thought this, but I didn't say anything, I don't want to hear it. That's what it is. It's like you could keep it. That's good for you, but you can't brag if you didn't go out there on the limb. So that's a great segue. Thank you so much for that brief introduction, Jason. I'm really excited to have you on the show and really excited to see what kind of insights you have about Atlanta and seeing them going forward. Let's now talk about those takeaways from round one, because as with every round, this was definitely one that had surprises for us. So let's kick things off. Ashley, just give us your fantasy focused recap of your takeaways from round one.
Yeah, because MLS straight out of the gate this year, I feel like, which usually MLS eases us into hashtag because MLS, but not this season. I don't think so. Not this season. I won all my head-to-heads. I don't have too much to complain about. Currently, without the point adjustments, I got 71 points, which I think is okay. But I personally made some errors. Like I tinkered and kind of listened to general talk and tried to play defensively, which is not how I like to play to start a season. So some yays that I had this week. Jordan Morris, Reid and I will talk about that more later. Jordan Morris coming through with the brace. I talked last week that, I just had this weird feeling, but then I read about both him and Pedro de la Vega, who didn't end up starting. And I read midweek that Seattle was going to rotate a lot of offensive. So I dropped Jordan Morris for Peck because everyone wouldn't shut up about Peck. And I should have listened to myself because that score difference was about 10 points, I think, 11 points. But I was really happy to see that. I was one of the people that did have Ricketts, the best 4.0 defender in the game last week. I wanted a San Jose defender, and I'd put in the cheapest one that I thought would play, and then that defender didn't play, and I saw Ricketts in there and said, well, let's just roll with it, and was very pleasantly surprised. So that was a good feeling. Some other yays, Cincinnati and LAFC shutouts. Shutouts were kind of hard to find this week, And then where they did pop up, besides those two games, I wasn't really expecting it. The Nashville shutout, I wasn't really expecting. I definitely wasn't expecting a shutout, but I will say that one of the things I said last week when we were talking, you know, for picks was I wasn't really sure that the Galaxy could put everything together. Peck should still be good, right? Um, I don't know that I felt like Christian Ramirez was good, but I just didn't feel like they were missing too many pieces. Maybe once Payne still got back, that was a hesitation for me. I did not see them losing and those players producing so poorly. No shutout, minutes played from Peck. That was surprising to me, but kind of in tune with what I'd predicted. So I understand that's not a yay, but it was a yay because I didn't pick anybody else up besides Peck. Some nays for me were Montreal and Chicago both scoring multiple away goals. That was not on my list. Those were two teams I was betting against for shutouts, so that was a pretty big bummer. Um, Bawanga, my guy. I mean, I live, breathe, and cry for that man, and he really let me down this week. Uh, doesn't I won't push him away for that, but that was a really surprising, you know, LA Galaxy looked a little flat against Colorado, but you think, oh, the weather, oh, midweek, oh, altitude. But I honestly felt like watching him and watching some of the other players I target in fantasy at home against a weaker Minnesota team, I still felt that they felt pretty flat. So that's a little concerning. And then my other two nays, Peck and Evander did not come through. The 2 points from Peck. I expected, and I have a feeling you did too, Reid, so I don't feel like I'm bashing on your new guy, but I just expected more from him after that midweek outing. Coming in
Yeah.
off the bench. I know the team that they were playing, in CCC was crappy, but a home debut at Charlotte, he came in goal and assist midweek. I expected a contribution and we did not get one, so that was a little disappointing. And then I'm gonna say this is only like the second or third time I've ever officially and non-hesitantly backed Seattle's defense, and both of the players that I put on my team got 1 point.
Oof.
1 point. This is why I can't do, for the sake, kind of like, Jason was just saying about not backing a guy. This is why I'm not going to back Seattle's defense. It's because when I don't back them, they have the most shutouts in the league. And I keep saying, I don't know. Okay, I'm going to go back to that because when I finally pick them up, and I did a couple times last season, but I came into this season really feeling like we've got it all put together and they can produce the same things as last year. And then own goal, no shutout, 1 point from Nuhu, 1 point from Fry on my team. So yeah, I did not appreciate that home team disrespect. And then just my general takeaways were I don't know if we should count out road teams. Road teams scored this week, like heavily. Road teams heavily put goals in the back of the net this opening round. Um and then I know this sounds very kind of dumb in general, but don't bank on last year's form. I think we all kind of tend to go into week one and think like, oh, the Vander's bonus points this, and Gabby Peck that, and Carlos Heel this, and I really felt like a lot of the expectations I had that were data driven from performances last season did not pan out this first week. Now that's not to say that they won't pan out week 2, 3, 4, 5 going forward. But for week one, the kind of rollover effects I assumed to see, and I'd kind of clump Miggy in with that too because I was expecting him to just. He's so excited to be back, and a contribution more than the 6. I was really expecting that, because I've watched him at Newcastle, and then I loved him in the game before. But there were several other players too, where Denis Bouanga being one of them, that I assumed last year's form would roll over, and it didn't week one. So that's kind of a takeaway that I had, and just kind of opening my eyes up to some of these new players or players who maybe weren't in the best form or are playing different positions. I need to kind of expand my scope outside of the expectations I have from how last season ended.
Yeah, great insights. Jason, what about you?
Yeah, I think I was surprised at the clean sheets from San Jose, San Diego, and Cincinnati. Those were 3 that I just didn't have clean sheets for. Like, beyond the idea of San Diego not really having a good read for them, I didn't expect a clean sheet in week 1 at all. San Jose, I thought, would be more chaotic on the defensive side as well as the offensive side. And Cincinnati, I'm really high on the Red Bulls in general. And I wondered with the midweek and CONCACAF, and I thought, maybe there's going to be a little more rotation to this, that the Red Bulls would give them more of a game and more of a putting goals on the board. I thought at a minimum, if Cincinnati wins, they're going to give up some goals here. I'm really high on the Red Bulls this season. That was surprising to me. From like a disappointment standpoint, Orlando shocked me, because that's a team that in general, I think is very good. I think generally Oscar Pereja teams are very defense first, like get that part of the team right. And I didn't expect a whole lot out of Philadelphia. I'm like, oh, this is an easy one. I went with Pedro Gallese in goal. And
there was a scratch, right? One of the defenders scratched.
Robin Janssen scratched, which probably affected some of it. But even that, they seemed really, it's one of those games where you have a new coach in Philly, not quite sure, even though he fits the game model that they've always had. You're not quite sure how that's going to go straight out of the gate. Orlando, I figured, would at least be solid on the defensive side, even with that.
Yeah.
And it just, didn't happen at all. Gallese, who is usually good for a good number of points in these games and getting clean sheets, nothing in this one, was a huge disappointment. The LA Galaxy at home, even with, Paintsill out, even with the whole like Ricky Pooch, but it's Marco Royce replacing him, I think Christian Ramirez can do really well there over the season. It just looked really off. And that
he and Peck missed passes to each other a dozen times in that game in a wild amount.
It just seemed so disconnected. I mean, you expect a little bit of it, but you're playing a team that's never played a competitive match before. You think at a minimum the Galaxy are going to put goals on the board, and I bet really big on that in my fantasy selections.
Yeah.
It killed me. I thought Ramirez, I'm like, okay, he's gonna fit them really well. Now I wonder if he'll hold up all season, but he's gonna fit in well. Royce, I thought, would fit in well and be able to. He's another one like that. I don't think he's going to be able to deliver a Ricky Pooch season. For me, Ricky Pooch in a normal MLS campaign would have been MVP last year. I thought he was that good. Royce isn't going to be that over 34 games, but at the beginning, you would think he would be. Really surprised by that. In terms of takeaways, I'm with you in terms of we always are so heavy in this league on home teams, go home teams, pick home teams, whether we're talking fantasy, we're talking like picking the game. I think that's starting to change. I really do. Matt Doyle talked about it in his Substack today about how maybe you're starting to see that separation in this league that you've never really seen before. Like, you'll see it over a longer period of time, but it's a little bit easier now with the way that salary caps are structured, with the way GAM's structured, with the way for Atlanta situation specifically, they sold a lot of players to add GAM. Selling Caleb Wiley, you added $3 million in GAM. So you're able to spend more money in general on your roster. Is that going to lead to bigger separation, more tiers, and bigger gaps between the teams that overcomes teams playing on the road? It's too early to tell. But I thought last year it was more volatile with road teams having success. This year it could be even more of not 50-50 games, but closer to that. And then that's going to trickle down to your selection here, because I'm always looking at which home teams do I feel like have a widest advantage. Which players do I feel like can feast at home against a lesser opponent? I don't think the gap's as big home away anymore. I don't. And I think that's something to watch early in the season.
Yeah, historically, the stats have always been there.
Yeah. I think it's starting to change, though. And it might not fully go yet, But I think that is starting to change, at least when you're talking about maybe your higher tier teams being able to go get more results on the road than they have in the past.
And it may just be normalizing more to what we see in other leagues. The one thing that I can say is that it has always been more statistically significant for MLS than others. So yes, as the quality increases, no, very, very good. And we'll definitely touch on some of that. Great lead in eventually for when we get to our player selections. So I'll wrap up everything right here, just kind of going through with some quick takeaways. You guys have touched on so many of them already. I know that we talked a lot at the last podcast for finding those budget players, those budget back people, and looking at the keepers and the keeperoos. Well, there was only one budget keeper who started, the one we all expected with Miami, and he did not do well. So
they got a red card.
That's true. That's
early,
fair.
like
that's
18
fair.
minutes.
That's fair. That's fair. But at the end of the day, his points did not do well.
Correct.
For what you were looking for with that. You are soccer-wise, yes, you are correct, and that was a legitimate reason why that happened. But he did not get the points, so that didn't do well. Be careful of that if you're looking at him for budget going forward, with where your value could rise with that meh score that he ended up with. On the other side, I want to talk about New England. We got the clean sheet there. We talked about them last week about how it was rebuilding. We were unsure of them, kind of keeping away. Things were connecting. Their keeper did well. Again, this 6-5-5, 6-6-5 kind of range is where a lot of the points are going to be at. But some of these just unexpected things, they happen. So keep an eye on that, especially for the budgets.
New England's a really interesting one. Like, I saw them in preseason. They played Atlanta, and they had so many new faces, like you said, that it's hard to get a read. But defensively, that's the part. They didn't have a great game against Atlanta, but getting to study the players they brought in, I think they have a lot of potential to be a good defensive team this year. I really do. It might take a minute.
Yeah.
You got a clean sheet here, but I think over time, like, that could be a really good team to watch.
Yeah, and that's going to be one to keep an eye on. Some of their players a little bit more expensive, but as Ashley mentioned, Ricketts from San Jose, I'm going to head and just say it. You're going to want him in your team, period, for at least the next 2, maybe 3 rounds, depending on his scores. And that is simply because his price is going to rise every week because of the 3-week, 5-week average that impacts the player pricing. He's going to be going up because he's so cheap and had that amazing score. So go ahead and just put him in your team. You will be at a value disadvantage if you do not. Well, small caveat, if you found someone who went up as much. But he's going to be rising consistently for the next couple of weeks at least. So that's one. Pretty much any defender who is sub 6 million and got a clean sheet in this last round, so they scored 7 or higher, you're going to see a price rise this week. You will likely see some price rises for the next week or 2 after that, especially if you find guys who are 5 million or lower in their value. You're probably going to be looking at, and again, got a clean sheet or goals, whatever, like I said, 7 points or higher. Those guys are going to be rising. So those are some takeaways you're going to want to be sure, because we are still in the phase of fantasy where having some of that budget back line, focusing on value building, so important to what you can do later on down the year. Just kind of going through there. You guys mentioned the San Diego game. That's wild. About the Austin game is another one where we saw Austin kind of did what we expected. We not high on Sporting Kansas City, a team that we're betting against. Weren't sure about Austin. They got the 1 goal. They got clean sheets. If you had their players, great. But those were probably your splurge defenders in those situations with that 6 million, depending on how you built your team. So that's one of the reasons why we didn't really recommend them, because we were really focused on that value back. But if you went with some of these players, that's what we expected, and we'll likely see with Sporting Kansas City fantasy-wise as one of those teams we're probably going to be targeting long-term. You guys mentioned Gutierrez with Chicago. That was nice. I did notice, though, midfielder, you want him to do that. His points are pure goals. There is a small caveat to watch out for any of those players that are pure goal point earners, because if they don't have those goals, can they make up for it with bonus points? So great to see it. Chicago's one that we were kind of down on, so good to see a little bit of a spark there. They've got some big names. Let's see if it keeps up and if he can make that consistent.
I think those big names help him be more consistent.
I-
He's
I-
one that I'm very high on all season.
Yeah, I mean, he's on my list later on, so we'll be sure to talk about him.
There we go.
Sneak peek.
He's not on mine.
Sneak peek. I talk about people. That's what I do. Yeah, I didn't touch this. I should have touched at the beginning. I got 67 points with this round. Mixed of opinions with how that went. I won 2 of my 4 head-to-heads. One of them was the host insider, and then the 2 head-to-heads I lost by 1 point. So we'll see what price corrections do to that, including the Pro Rel Champions League. But tough opponents there, so really fun. That's what gets me going with fantasy, these head-to-heads. But I made a couple of changes at the end, and they were influenced by some of the changes in the lineup. One of them was I brought in more LAFC players than I had intended initially because I wanted to play the Aru game to give myself some flexibility, which meant I brought in Bawanga and I dropped Benteke. Did not work out for me because had Benteke hit, my plan would have been to scrub Peck to get those points. So it would have been a net game. It would have been a net game right there. And the other one was, I agree. When I saw that midweek game of Evander, I was like, hey, I like this. I was already going with Almiron because, as I said in my captain's short video, that he is not really a new player. We know what to expect. We've seen him. And so I felt good about having him in my team. Didn't fall the way I wanted, but I don't regret the logic that got me to that pick. Like, I felt confident he did good stuff. I expect more from him in the future. But Evander was the same way. I was like, I saw the goal, I saw the assist. I was like, yes, he got a few minutes there. I'll probably get 70-some minutes this time. I feel good about this. And the points didn't fall, but he had chances. He was setting up things. He was creative, and there very easily could have been production right there. So I am bullish on Evander going forward as the chemistry starts to build. It didn't happen. Unfortunately, I dropped Ojeda from Orlando for Evander, which points-wise was a big hit. But that was wise because I saw that midweek form. And I still think that's important for these CCC teams, is to see how they're doing in these midweek games, to take what you will from them of caution or acceptance for what you want to have. So those were some of the picks. And I was talking about general midfields right there. So all of those guys, Ojeda again showed why we like him for fantasy. Even though Orlando got trounced, he had 17 key passes. He generated 4 bonus points just from key passes, like almost a clean sheet just from key passes. So
that's an insane number.
That is an insane number.
Insane.
And like we were talking about before with soccer overlapping with fantasy, I said last week I wanted to pick him up just from watching him play Miami.
Absolutely.
And it resonated. I don't know if it always will. I don't know him well as a player. I watched one game and thought, gosh, I like him. I like his price point. I like that matchup. I'm just gonna roll with him.
Yeah.
And
And that's what I was thinking. And then I saw that Evander game and I was like, ooh, that could, I know people aren't high on him, but this could actually, so I was rolling the dice there. But yeah, and Ojeda leads me into some of the forwards because, again, pay attention to those bonus points. When you're looking at these stats, it's a little bit difficult right now with the game not unlocked, but you can see those. If you click on the game preview there, the view stats, you can scroll through and see where they generated all their bonus points. Ojeda's points, the bonus points were fantastic. But you've got to watch out, like I said, with Gutierrez. Those attacking players who don't always have those supporting bonus points can get you into trouble. One of them I'll give as an example here is Rossi. Gonna own that one as an oversight of someone we should have talked more about last week. And he got goals in this last round, but no bonus points, at least no key passes. And that has always been the key hallmark of, it was something that Cucho benefited from, but a key hallmark of an absolutely valuable fantasy forward is in 2 ways. One, they consistently score, which that you want that because of the consistency. Or 2, they share the ball. They back up those assists, those key passes, those crosses, and that helps supplement them when they're not attacking because they're still generating those chances with that bonus points for shots usually. So Rossi doesn't have that, or at least didn't have that in this past round. So just be careful if you start chasing the points with these guys. First few weeks, you're looking for price rises. I get it. But long term, be careful about chasing the points. They don't have those underlying bonus point generators, because that's going to be very, very crucial. Wrap everything up, just kind of a quick flow through with some of the expectations. I know we mentioned that DC and Toronto game. Both of these teams not fantastic. I mean, we know DC's defense struggles. We saw that against Toronto, who are just kind of rebuilding and struggling in itself. So these are probably a 2-2 line, probably fair, likely teams that many of us will be targeting going forward. I didn't see anything fantasy-wise to make me not think that from this game. The Nashville game, I know Mukhtar came up last week, so I wanted to touch on this real quick. I'm not optimistic from what I've seen so far with what they came in with. I'm still concerned about wanting to throw in a Nashville player in any place but a bench for Naru at the beginning of this season until they show me some more. As I mentioned earlier, though. Go ahead.
100% agree.
Mhm.
100%. Like they're a team that I see a lot down here, and I don't think they've figured out what they want to be with new manager, even though he was there last year. Like, they really feel in flux. And also seeing Mukhtar over the years now, I feel like he's lost a step. And I feel like the system that they're going towards doesn't really suit what he did before. So he's one that scares me in terms of being a big producer under BJ Callahan and in fantasy. I don't know if he will be anymore.
Yeah, it's a good takeaway. But as I said earlier, a little optimistic about New England. I want to see a little bit more. Feel where consistency might come. But yeah, right there. The other interesting one for me, St. Louis, Colorado. I mean, some shakeups in Colorado with some honest to goodness chances from St. Louis to get some points. So I'm still interested in that St. Louis team. Not down on Colorado. Maybe the right matchup. I'm still willing to look at them. Maybe in the middle tier, but I'm still interested in seeing St. Louis. Maybe give them a shot in round 2, right there, and then to wrap it all up. The San Jose game, great scores. I think Bruce Arena put it best when he was talking about it, is that RSL came back from Costa Rica. This was a hard turnaround for them. Not trying to take away anything from their guys, but you got to have that factor into your situation, which leads me into that is why we talk about checking these CONCACAF Champions Cup games. Players are traveling. We highlighted it last year. Who was a road domestically, who was a road internationally. That is stuff you have to consider in the turnaround time with the players. So I think it clearly impacted RSL, but benefited the points for San Jose Earthquake. So I'll end it there. I think you guys gave a great recap. These things, for those of you new, this section tends to get a little bit shorter as the season goes on. But right now, especially round 1, a lot of new stuff that we're bringing in from the season. So I hope you found some helpful information there. Let us know what your takeaways are. Hit me up on Twitter, hit me up on Blue Sky, hit us up at the MLS Fantasy Boss Discord. Share your thoughts. It's the way this community grows and people have fun. And so it's just really, really entertaining to see people's takes and the reaction to that times too, but super helpful for everyone.
I'll give you a nugget on Atlanta, and you might want to file this away for a minute. You talked about teams that are kind of still building chemistry and kind of figuring that out and what it's going to look like. And I agree with all the ones you mentioned. From the Atlanta perspective, in terms of the attack, so they had not played together at all in preseason. I'm watching it and I can see them like trying to figure it out on the fly. That attacking 4 with Moranchuk, with Lobjanitsa on one side, Almiron on the other, and Latte Lot up top. They're going to get better with time, but I think the other trigger to really look at how they get really better is when you get your fullbacks healthy. You didn't have Pedro Amador on the left side. You didn't have Brooks Lennon on the right side. Those are 2 very attack-minded fullbacks. And the way that Atlanta's playing right now, Almiron's on the right side cutting in on his left foot, so he's coming in narrow. Saba's on the left side cutting in on his right foot. So they get very narrow. When the fullbacks are with this team, with Lennon and Amador, who will create a lot of assists, that's going to work better. In this game and right now for Atlanta, your second tier on your fullbacks, it was Edwards and it was Hernandez. And they're both solid defensively, but they're not going to add that attacking element. And you think about that from their positioning and like what they could give you. it will affect the attack until you get fully whole right now. I think that attack will hit on all cylinders when Lennon's back and when Amador's back. So if you're thinking about Atlanta players, keep that in mind, that when you see Lennon and Amador back in the team, I think the attack just works better.
So one quick thing before we wrap everything up, there was a comment in chat about Mukhtar, and so I will acknowledge he did get 7 points in their 0-0. Nothing. He got 2 points from key passes. He had 5 shots, and so that was one there, and some passing numbers right there, but no assists, no goals. I think it's safe to say that at $8 million, you want more from him at that, but yes, we will acknowledge that he did come away with 7 points. He does have bonus point potential, so if that does keep up, we could be higher, but if they're unable to get goals on the sheet, then that's really going to eat into his value.
I don't think he gets goals and assists like he used to. I don't think he does anymore. I'm sorry, Nashville fans. Sorry.
Hey, it is what it is. It is what it is. But
I'll play into that though. 7 points with no goal and assist is a pretty decent outing. But I agree with you about the price.
Yeah, you can see. Well, we'll talk about other players who we think have decent outings or who are worth the point values coming up in our next section where we're talking about players we're targeting. Awesome. Okay. That was great stuff. Great stuff. Let me get the social real quick. Let's see here.
What are you doing?
I'm getting the social ready.
Okay.
I had my document loaded up and it didn't save what I did last time, so I had to retype it real quick. So that's what it was. Don't worry.
I don't know what you do back there, Reid. If it wasn't for you, nothing here would run.
What happens?
I just show up.
All right. There is a post on social. So once again, please do like and share. Super helpful like that. And we will go into our final round. I got a special way to kick this one off. All right, welcome back to our final segment where we're talking about the players that we're targeting going into round 2. Just a quick little bit of just housekeeping about the games at the start. But before that, a very important shout out that I wanted to give at this point. The current #1 overall player in the MLS fantasy game is Ranquito FC, who is none other than the son of our very own Gene, who joins us in almost every live stream. So huge congrats to Gene's son. 99 points right there. Doing good work in round.
I love when it's the second generation.
What
a fun time.
It is. We're going to have some great things there. So
good for you, Gene.
Wanted to highlight that in a very visible point of the show. So congrats right there. Let's start talking about round 2. Game starts Saturday, March 1st at 2:15 p.m. with Charlotte versus Jason's own Atlanta.
That's
right
us.
Here. That's you right there.
Trip up I-85.
Going up that way. I know it might be hard.
That is a rivalry game, is it not? Isn't it a?
Yeah, there should be. Charlotte's going to try to have more fans than Atlanta did last week. There's definitely a lot of back and forth between the two groups. It's probably 60,000 plus in Charlotte for that one, and there'll be a lot of Atlanta United fans that make the trip.
That'd be fun. That's one to tune into. And it's early at 2:15, so you can check it out. Usual Apple TV start times right here. A lot of Aroos. We've got 2:15 opener. Then we got a bunch of games between 7:30 and 10:30, and then a few late games on Sunday that are easy to move around. Again, the Sunday games, we've got Vancouver versus LA Galaxy, and then Houston versus Miami. Those are going to be easy teams to work with your Aroos. But you can also look at the 2:15 game, easy one to preview, and then the 10:30 games are going to be easy to work with that too. Watch those midweek games. 7:30 is usually okay to work with the 10:30s, but those 8:30s and 9:30s saw a few lineups this week where people had 8:30 and 9:30 players going for an Aroo. It can work, but you're pretty much banking on the first half result before you make your decision. So just be careful with all that. Nobody on a bye, nobody on a double game week, but we do have our teams traveling once again for CONCACAF Champions Cup. The home teams this week: Miami, LAFC, Vancouver, Seattle, MyFC Cincinnati, and Real Salt Lake. The away teams are Colorado and Sporting Kansas City, but they are domestically away. I don't think we have anybody international away
No.
this week. So
Nope.
a much better result. Keep that in mind. That definitely impacted teams last week. Look at those lineups, look at those scores, and just see what you can gather right there.
I think the other thing that could be tricky when you're thinking CONCACAF this week is Miami and Sporting. I think will be a dogfight between those two because it's close.
Yeah.
Colorado LAFC, I think, will be the same.
It's a great point.
Vancouver could be. I think Seattle and RSL will go for it. I think Seattle and Cincinnati are two who maybe, and you'll know by that time. I think they might be able to take it a little easier in CONCACAF.
No, that's a great to point out. I mean, the logistics of the match and what they have to play for is also huge. So
the rotations can get interesting. So keep an eye on how many minutes these guys play in some of those tight games.
I imagine we'll still see Evander in this one as he's working at the fitness, and we'll see what else comes with Cincinnati.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. Maybe 45 for him or something like that.
Yeah, just get some reps on those legs.
Yeah.
We did mention last week, that there was a card last week. There were some other things that went on. Head over to the MLS Fantasy Boss Discord to have the latest updates about player availability. That is tracked in the mega reference there in the tools section. It is just easy to point people there and get all your information. So check that out at the Discord, because right now we're going to start talking players. And as always, we're starting with keepers and defenders. So Jason, who are you looking at?
So looking at this one, I have to look at CJ Dos Santos and San Diego. I'm not as high, it sounds like, on St. Louis as you are. I think on the road for them in San Diego with a home opener in franchise history, and after seeing them, I really like CJ Dos Santos in that game. That's a player that I will be looking at. The other goalkeeper that I'm considering, it's going to be one or the other, and I haven't made my decision yet, is Carlos Cornell. And it kind of goes back to the idea of kind of how I'm feeling about Nashville. And on the road at Red Bulls, I think they're going to struggle, especially after Red Bulls didn't get a good result in week one. I think they're going to be fired up in the home opener. I like Red Bulls in that game a lot, which means I like Cornell in that game a lot. On the defensive side, Franco Negri, another San Diego player, is one that I think he's a guy who fits their style, can get forward. I think we're still figuring out what San Diego is going to be, so it's a little hard. He's a defender who can get forward and make things happen. So I like him in that situation. And I like Sean Nealis for the Red Bulls as well. A guy who is great in the air, and that could come in handy on set pieces and things like that. But I just don't rate Nashville's attack. I really don't. The other one, and this is where I need your fantasy experience on this. We got a chance to see Jaden Nelson of Vancouver, his return to the league, and that guy's fast. The goals that
offensive.
Oh my goodness, he was killing me in that game, just flying past. I think it was Ortiz for Portland that tried to slap him down twice and couldn't catch him. Nelson was not in on week one at all. I would assume he's in week two, and I would be lighting it up if he's not some ridiculous price point.
Will Skylar make the adjustments after seeing the week one form? So
please, Skylar, please. I want Jaden Nelson in my team.
Yeah, we'll see what that is, because I think that's what maybe hesitated people last time, was that a lot of the Vancouver players in that mid 6 and up price range. So maybe it could be the splurge that people are looking for.
I might splurge on Jaden Nelson with that speed.
Yeah. Ashley.
Yeah, I'm kind of I agree about CJ Dos Santos. I was relatively impressed with him, but when I think about the lack of teeth from what was the best front three last season to a mediocre one this season, San Diego seemed to be like they have a defensive mind to them. So I could see that pick, but I'm going opposite in time frame. I'm looking at a Lloris to Ustari for keepers if Ustari starts. I'm still trying to spend as little money as possible on my back end. And I would prefer to pick keepers who had shutouts, which Dos Santos did as well, for possible price rising, even if they weren't in my team the first week. So I'm taking the same approach to defenders. I had Ricketts, keeping Ricketts. I had Teenage Adebe, keeping Teenage. Um, Valencia for New York is a 4.3 midfielder for New York Red Bull. I like him. I don't like the team, but Duggan for Minnesota, 4.0 defender. And then I'm not sure he continues to start, but Marlon for LAFC. He's a 5.8. He's someone I almost tinkered in because he was the cheapest option, and I did feel good about that LAFC defense. I didn't end up doing it, but I'm just still stacking the cheapest possible back line so I can spend that money in my midfield and forwards. That's kind of the strategy I'm working with. I could be wrong, and there's someone who will stat me later, but I feel like we have a few less cheap defenders to work with this season than we have in some seasons past.
So
I feel like they spread the pricing out a little cleaner in the sense that almost fucking everybody's 6.0. There's not a lot of 4 or 5. You know what I mean? Like there's very few. I'd like to look at it. I haven't actually done that deep dive just to be a complainer, but I feel like there's a little less cheap options and everybody is kind of generally the same price, but I just don't want to spend that money yet, so I'm not gonna. But I definitely agree about Nelson. I have no idea what to anticipate. Yes, they were playing a man up, but he's the type of defender I always lean towards wing backs. That's just where
same.
I go, is a defender who will get up the field. I think there's a lot of benefits to center backs, and there's a lot of points to be had in this game from good center backs. But I am a wing back, get up the field defender by nature. So I'm interested to see, where he is. And we talked about this a little bit last week, but I feel like this is a good point to echo that it is a bummer that not everybody was in the game. But they just weren't. And I continue to say, I feel like I say this a lot, but nobody yell at Skylar. Please don't. It's not Skylar's fault. Nothing's ever Skylar's fault. And I just think that, we just got to play around it. No one got him. So really it's fair, right? No one could pick this person or that person. And, there's the striker for San Diego wasn't in the game. And so it's definitely an oversight and it's frustrating, but
everyone was on the same foot.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Nobody gained an advantage from it.
No.
There. So the only little bit that I'll add with the keepers is I think Ustari is still the back end of your keeper route, because the one thing I didn't add at the beginning of the show was that the thing about being 4.0 is you're not going to lose any money. So you're not going to gain anything, so you don't really expect to have much come there from those values, but you can't go below 4.0. So you're not going to lose any value of your team. And just with the budgets right now, I still don't think the extra 2.5, 2.8 plus million that you would spend on a goalkeeper is going to be a better spin than if you got that into your field. So I still think it's going to be Ustari there on the back end for sure. Pairing up with that, I agree, Ashley, looking for one of those teams that got a clean sheet. And you mentioned a couple of players there. I'm going to add in Daniel. I know we were talking about at the beginning of the show that some of these away teams could be worth taking a look at. Don't rank Sporting Kansas City very high. This is on the road. Maybe Daniel. I don't know how super great I feel about that one, but I think Daniel's an option you could throw around today, along with Lloris and those ones that you mentioned. And then, okay, here we go. It's the first time of the year I'm saying this. It's round 2. I can't believe it. Maybe Takaoka over there with Vancouver. And this is purely because of LA Galaxy. It's sort of the 360.
We're already going against
No, it's not the 360.
Wow.
It's the 180. Well, we'll see. It's the 180 against Sporting Kansas City. This is Monday. This is stuff I'm just thinking. And in my mind is LA was a lot more impacted by not having Pooch than I had anticipated. I
Or
thought,
Paintsill or
or
Jokic.
Yeah, the
Paintsill,
Paintsill one might be the biggest one,
and
honestly.
it could be, but they were. I had more faith in Fagundes coming in. I had
I
more
did
faith
too.
in some of these players coming in. It didn't happen, and if that's what we're going to get again, I might be willing to throw a flyer on Takaoka. It works
Okay.
for the keeperoo.
Sure.
Almost. I mean, there might be a little bit of time, but I'd be comfortable enough with that 2 hour gap right there. But see, like I said, these are things just throwing around. I mean, you mentioned LA. A lot of these teams, I'm not sure how many clean sheets I see in this one because it's just crazy up in the air. I mean, even that Minnesota Montreal game, Minnesota came out with some more to them than I think people expected, and Montreal is scrappy. So
I have said it. I said it last year, late in the season, when we ended up matched up with Montreal going into that wild card game. I said it coming into this game. I think Laurent Courtois is one of the best managers in the league. I think he gets a lot out of what he's got to work with.
Sure.
And I think especially offensively, that's a team that causes opponents problems. So I think they will have some stinkers because there's just a lack of talent compared to other teams.
Yeah.
But he punches above his weight with that group. So they're a tough out. Even in like they were a tough out in Atlanta. I think they're going to be a tough out for Minnesota.
Yeah.
But I also really like that Coronel shutout. That's probably where I'm leaning to right now, just because I also don't care much for the Nashville form. So
that's where I'm at.
Not a lot of options, but I want to talk about some of the other ones that might be in people's minds, and I can definitely see where you come from that. All right, let's move on to midfielders. Ashley, who do you have?
I love Ryan Gauld. 8.5, don't even care. I'll figure it out. I like him for the same reasons you were just talking about Takioka, to be honest, just on the other side of the ball. He looked great against Portland. He seemed, I know Portland was a man down. I acknowledge this. Honestly, he seemed mid-season form for Scottish Messi. He looked great. He was at the heart of almost everything that they did, and I would expect that to repeat. Now, the Galaxy have a new keeper, but the same back line. So, letting 2 goals in at home tells me I probably could let something in on the road. So, I like Ryan Gauld just from week 1 performance. I was one of those stupid people that thought, oh, Hernan Lopez running at the 10 with Chicho and Yosef, he'll produce more points than Espinoza, surely. And that wasn't right. Espinoza's bonus point production was fantastic week 1. So I honestly think that I will pick him up in that road game as well. I think I'm going to stick with Ojeda. I liked Ojeda, again, same reason for that bonus point production. And then I am being a little picking on here, but I think I might grab one more road midi and do Hartel for St. Louis going down to San Diego. It is a home opener. Home openers for new teams are not often shutouts either way. And so I just think that St. Louis can put something by them. I'm just not a big fan of home teams this round, if that makes sense. I think there's a couple other options, like, Gutierrez against DC, I think maybe, but there's just a lot of home teams that I'm not thrilled with. And so I think I'm kind of going against my own traditional advice, which is I'm picking a lot of road midfielders this week. And then I just wanted to call out a couple of cheap midfielders who started this past week and had decent point production. Both these midfielders are 5.0, which is incredibly cheap for starters, but Georgine Meningu for Seattle and then Mosquera for Atlanta. I don't know, Jason can tell us if he thinks he'll start next week, but I think there's a chance that come on, Jason.
But he's gonna be probably off the bench at some point, and he's really turned into that super sub for this team. So the way that they're gonna play, your wingers are gonna run themselves into the ground, so he'll play. I don't know if it's more than 15, 20 minutes, but he'll play, and he's been impactful pretty consistently off the bench for a while now.
So Seattle pulled the opposite of CCC, where they rested in their home MLS opener. They rested half their DPs. Um, because they just traveled. So Georgie was someone that I think there's a chance you could see him start again. And he had an assist. He's very busy getting in the box and whipping in crosses. So for 5.0, yes, it's a road game, but RSL plays midweek too, and had a very poor defensive showing on the road week 1. So if he's starting, if Seattle continues that pattern of play everyone for CCC and then rotate for the MLS weekends, I think that he's someone that definitely could play into a lineup, and it comes at kind of a rough time, when you're waiting to see Seattle's lineup. But and I know, what about Rusnak? I just, with the rotation, I just don't know when he'll start, and so kind of saving space for a cheaper bench option is where I'm leaning. Um, and then the last defender I hadn't thrown into my notes, but I was really tempted with Bukhari, 6.5 Austin midfielder last week. I ended up going with Diego Fagundes instead, which was a real womp. But I feel like he's someone that might be a good person to look at. Again, another road, another road midfielder. But even, considering the red card, Portland's defense looked really bent out of shape. New people, new positions. Crepeau is still supposed to, someone that I consider to be a great keeper, but they had a stat on the game. I don't know if you heard this, Jason, for Portland, where they said Crepeau only contributed to one of Portland's shutouts last season.
Yeah.
The
Oh, yeah.
rest were
I did hear that.
the rest were Pantomis.
Yeah.
And that was very, like, surprise. I don't even know what other word to say, but that was very surprising to me. So I'm not trying to kick the Timbers when they're down. I think we know I am, but I think Bukhari, based on that week 1 performance, I think he might be someone to look at as well. Again, I don't know why I'm going all road midfielders.
It's fine. No, I mean, there's some options.
But I am.
Wow, bold. I like it.
No, it's
No.
Portland, I like when you get into Crepeau, I think we all still live in the past a little bit with him. I don't think he's the same as he used to be, and it's kind of sad.
Yeah.
Because I saw that guy, and I know you did. Ashley, he stood on his head so many times out west, and I mean, we had a game the last time we were in Vancouver in 2019 at BC Place on a Wednesday night. It was just a weird night all the way around. He made a couple of the best saves I've seen in person until what Brad Gazan did in Fort Lauderdale last year in the playoffs. It was ridiculous. So I think, like, I still look at him like that, and he's not that guy anymore.
No.
It's something that will affect him. Like, that's one, when you start thinking about stashing somebody and thinking about, when they're going to pop up into the lineup, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Pantomis at some point. It wouldn't shock me. Midfielders for me, I have one road midfielder, and it's Espinoza. I think Kansas City is going to throw everything they possibly have at Miami. I think they'll challenge them in midweek. I think that's going to affect them at home on Saturday. I do. And I think San Jose, with Bruce Arena, the Bruce Arena era is off to a good start. And I like how he's using Espinoza a lot. So that's one that I'm all in on. The others, with one exception, I'll hold the last one. Two guys we've talked about a decent bit at this point already. Brian Gutierrez, who I'm super high on. I don't really think DC is going to give Chicago much of a challenge in this one. I think Chicago's a better team, and I think they're going to continue to get better under Berhalter. Gutierrez should be a really good fit for everything he wants to do, and he had a good first week. So I like that one a lot. I don't know if he gets 2 goals every week, but I like him in terms of creating chances as well. That's kind of where I've always leaned to him. He's at home against a team that I'm not super high on.
Yeah.
I like it. Ojeda, all in on Ojeda. I think Orlando has to be better in this one, right? And they're playing Toronto, who they, is Lorenzo Insigne going to be allowed to get on the plane this week? Who knows? I'm high on Ojeda. I'm high on Orlando this week. The one that is maybe a little bit of a discount pick, and I think he's a really good matchup here, and I think he's a really good fit for his team, is Peter Stroud of the Red Bulls. What was he last week? 5.3, I think. I like him in terms of you're gonna get with the Red Bulls and against the Nashville team, especially. I think you're gonna get some of those turnovers that you can feast on, and those don't always fall with that team in the same way that maybe we think of other teams where it's going to be the same core guys creating the chances and getting on the end of chances. I think with the Red Bulls press and what Sandro Schwartz likes to do, it can be a little bit of everybody. And I think Stroud is such a good fit for that system in that he can play, but he can also take advantage of some of those kind of cheap goals. So I like Stroud a lot. The other one is Saba Lobjanidze for Atlanta. I think when you look at Atlanta, a lot of people are going to go to Latte Lot, obviously. A lot of people are going to go to Almiron, obviously. Lobjanidze was 7.3 in the first week. He's going to, as the year goes on, I don't know if it happens this week, but he's going to be that guy that last year had to put the team on his back a lot. This year, there's going to be, between Moranchuk, Almiron, and Latte Lot, teams are going to have to key on him. Teams are going to have to put numbers there. Saba's going to benefit from that. And Saba's a guy who is one of the hardest working players in the league you're going to find. I think he was 7th in the league in sprints last year. He can score, he can assist. He's going to create volume in terms of points, and he's at a pretty good number right now. So is it this week on the road against Charlotte? Well, Atlanta's been in Charlotte 3 times and they've won twice. So it's not a place that they're afraid of. It might be a good road pick is Saba Lobjanidze for Atlanta.
Okay.
You're nailing that name, so definitely.
I've said it a few times.
I can only imagine with that. Yeah, I don't really have many people I'm going to add to the list. You guys have touched a lot already. I'll just go down. I mean, if you just filter by the mids that had the highest scores, I mean, I think Gutierrez is one that we're going to be seeing price rising from as well. He's going to be in the low to mid 8 million, so definitely can still fit into your team even with these budgets. You could probably at least fit 3 8 million players into your midfield, depending on how to have the rest of your team set up pretty easily. So, I mean, Gutierrez, Gald, Rusnak, if he plays, are probably going to be seeing the increases based on their performance. Espinoza absolutely is going to see price rise with those points. Ojeda, so a lot of good options there. It'll be interesting to see what Bernardeschi does. I mean, I know they're going up against Orlando, who are missing some defense right now. That could be opportunities there. Don't rate Toronto very high, but interesting plays. It was mentioned in chat, Gazdag, 7.8, got 9 points. He'll probably see some kind of price increase coming up to Cincinnati, or not Cincinnati, sorry. Cincinnati going to Philly, which is, of course, is always the interesting game with the history of our coach there. I don't know. I think that'll be a good game. I was impressed with some of the defense that Cincinnati had, so I don't know how easy it will be for Gazdag, but longtime favorite of this show, Gazdag, definitely has some good chops to him. And Philly came out stronger than I think we definitely expected.
Big time.
Some right there.
Big
I mean,
time.
looking at people like Ruiz as well that had some good production with the price points. I mean, just go through here. Osorio might be a better pick if you're going to go with a Toronto player, which is some of his history with being involved with that in the price point.
Yeah,
definitely bench people if you're looking at that for Toronto. But take some time, scroll through the list once the prices update and see. Scroll through the list, see what these last week points were, because that will help you at least get some guys that maybe they're not going to have a great score, but you're probably still going to get a price rise out of them. And it's worth it. Trust me, it's worth it to play that game at the start.
I'll give you one more guy and watch Miami and see how they do in midweek. A player that I'm super high on in the system, and he had a good week first week, Jack McGlynn. I really think Jack McGlynn is going to thrive in Houston.
Yeah.
He got 7 points in week 1. He's 7.8 million, so not a crazy amount. He's on that borderline where you might feel like you can get really good value out of him. Yeah. I think he's going to have a huge year. And if Miami if they go heavy into CONCACAF, which I think they will, and you see heavy legs on a Sergio Busquets, for example, Jack McGlynn could thrive on Sunday at home against Miami.
And they'll be missing Aviles, which is an important center back for them.
Yep.
And Jack McGlynn in that Houston game had an absolute stinger from outside of the box that hit the frame. He looked great in that midfield.
Yep,
I think he's going to be perfect for Ben Olsen. I think Olsen's going to get the best out of him. Maybe this is the week where he really, really breaks out.
We'll see. Let's move on to forwards. Let's see here. Jason, who do you have?
I mean, we do have this new guy wearing red and black stripes that I kind of like, Latte Lot. He's so fast. Like, it's ridiculous how fast he is. And he's got that weird combination of being fast and quick. Like over a 40, he's really fast, but over 3 steps, he's really fast. He's really quick. Historically, in these games between Atlanta and Charlotte, Atlanta has gotten in behind Charlotte a lot. That's Latte Lot's kind of game. And it's not something we saw connect as much in week 1. His goals were kind of different. And it's, you're looking at strikers who don't get goals in the flow of play, but they're still finding them. You're going to feel pretty good about once he actually gets games with the guys around him, that continues to improve. That could be something to watch for against a Charlotte backline that I don't think is the fleetest of foot. I really think Latte Lot could have another kind of big game. The other one, and we talked about him earlier, is Diego Rossi. I think Rossi is going to have to carry things for Columbus right now a little bit. I think he's a guy who is capable of giving you goals, assists, chances created, volume of shots. I think he can hit all of those boxes for you right now. So I like Rossi a lot in general because of what he has to be for Columbus at the moment. They are at New England, so I'm a little reluctant on that one. But he's a player in terms of being a fit for their team and what they could give you that I really, really like. And I know I went with 2 road forwards, but that's kind of where I'm at with the matchups this week. That's where I keep leaning.
Ashley.
Yeah, I love Messi. I've never pretended not to. He is in my team if he is in his. That's just kind of how I roll. I talked earlier about not loving a lot of the home matchups. I should want Denis Bouanga. I, more than most people, should want Denis Bouanga at home after not traveling internationally versus NYCFC. Not the greatest defensive team, some defensive injuries right now. I don't know if I do because, like I said earlier as well, I think there's some players that I'm banking on last season's form, and I'm not listening to this weekend's results. And I'm worried that that's the case for LAFC and Denis Bouanga. Now, I'll probably end up having him anyways because I am a sucker for a fancy striker with guy lights. But I don't think anyone should. Like, I'm not suggesting it, but I'm being transparent that I'll probably have him. I don't know if that's the right call. I also I do want a piece of this San Diego game, inaugural home game. Love that stadium. I've been lucky enough to watch soccer there. But you can't see Dreyer's scores because he's not in the game. But I like Chucky Lozano. I do. He got an assist. He got a bonus point, 2 bonus points maybe. He looked confused out on that wing a little bit. But I do think a home opener is something that he's gonna rise up for. So he is a home striker I'm considering. But I also was looking at Rossi and just the points he was able to produce week 1. And like you said, Jason, I'm well aware until they make a signing that this whole game is running through him.
Yeah.
And it's something that I think he can excel at. I don't think he'll be able to produce every single week, but I do think he'll be able to replicate a version of that week 1 score quite often as the team continues to play through him. It's not, is it Rossi or is it Cucho? Because Cucho was gone. It's just Rossi right now.
I like the Chucky pick too. I think against St. Louis, who's going to play such a high line. San Diego, we saw it against the Galaxy, that ability to get in behind in transition.
Yep.
That should really fit Lozano in a perfect way. So that
Absolutely
could be a great play this week.
Reid.
So you didn't mention Jordan Morris. Shall we talk about
he's
Jordan
on
Morris?
the road.
That's true.
He's on the road. RSL's a weird kryptonite place for Seattle to play. And
That's
like
right.
I said,
that's been a really
RSL,
weird matchup.
Yeah, it's a jinx for Seattle on the road for sure. But also I'm just worried about the rotation, honestly. I'm worried because Schmetzer rotated for MLS and played everyone for CCC. So I would expect, because Jordan didn't get rotated, that you would see him rotated at RSL and Jesus Ferreira start in the 9, which is not where Jesus Ferreira should mostly be playing for the Sounders. But I don't know. I just don't trust that, and that's a later game. But Jordan Morris has the brace and is awesome, and Reid can take it. But I'm not taking him this week.
No, I'm not taking it.
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention it because he got points. He'll probably see a price rise, but I'm not taking that absolutely at all.
He will for sure.
I like the Atlanta shout. I like the Crew shout. I like the San Diego shout. I mean, it covers a lot of the main people I think will be looking at Messi. I mean, I think you could pencil in Benteke at least one more round on your list away against Chicago, which Chicago's defense, Chicago's errors that were still happening. Chicago's got some attack I think we're lacking, but Benteke potentially there with look at. I mean, if you're looking at just some potential price rises at the forward spot, I mean, it's hard not to look at like Musa as well, who got 11 points last week.
Well, hold on.
Baribo, who got 11 points. I'm just going down the list.
No, I know, but Musa's one that worries me because he was a gifted goal. One of his goals was a pass to him. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right. But
still a goal.
But he got 11 points in the game. That's what I'm talking about. Is like, this is someone maybe you put in there because that's what you're hoping for. Maybe your budget's
just
there.
To make some money.
Dallas traveling to Colorado. Not the move I'm going to make, but people are making decisions at different times and budgets and kind of see it's like, I get why you might go that way.
Well, Colorado's playing midweek. Maybe not be the worst.
I mean, Prince Owusu, 6.8, 11, if he's playing there with Toronto. Again, that's a guy that may just be on your bench trying to get some of the price rises with that.
Owusu with Montreal this season, he was really impressive against Atlanta. And he's a guy who, again, going back to how I feel about Montreal, like, I think he's somebody that is one of these diamonds in the rough that Laurent Courtois can get a good bit out of, because it's Caden Clark, it's Bryce Duke typically underneath, and Owusu is the kind of forward that his assist, he drifted out wide and then puts in a cross. So he's a guy who fits the system. He's a guy who I think will continue to build chemistry, and he's a really good price point. So if you like Montreal in a given week, he might be a guy to watch.
Not that anybody likes Montreal in a given week, but sometimes we just go that way, you know.
There's some guys, I don't know.
I think they'd be fun to watch. I
Yes.
I don't know about picking them for my fantasy team, but I would be remiss if I did not mention at least one more name when I'm talking about some forwards, and that is Dink right there from my own team. He has been the best forward pickup that we've made. Like, we've dropped money on since we've started. Like, he is legitimately coming up there and doing the things and the hold up and the chances and the hustle that I was seeing in this game last week with the forwards going up there and Evander going up there. Lucho did not do that. I love Lucho. You can see it back behind me. I love Lucho. Lucho did not play like that. Different player. So I think he's a legitimate conversation even on the road to Philly. Philly gave up to against Orlando, which is a good team. It had some good options. Orlando had him on the XG as well. So Philly's given up opportunities. And
a decent bit of that XG was late, though. That was one thing that
is fair.
Game was done. So
that is fair. But we've seen those goals in the 95th minute and stuff like that. That's where.
No, I don't trust Philly yet. Even with a good week one, I don't trust them yet. I think Cincinnati will go there and win that. I really do. I think Orlando some of the mistakes is what hurt them here. I'd be
Mhm.
curious to see how Philly respond, how they handle a second week, how they handle this at home, how Cincinnati goes over there
Yep.
and does. Some of it'll be down to the rotation in the midweek for Cincy.
It'll be a good game to watch.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. That's definitely on my list this week.
Let's wrap everything up with our captains. Ashley.
You know who it is. If he's in and he's playing, it's him, Messi.
Jason.
I was going to ask you about that. Is it just automatic? You just automatic if he's playing, he's your captain. No thought.
I got this. I got you. So this is the comment I made during the short that I had with YouTube last week when I did a little captains on Friday. The reason that you pick Messi is because you're not expecting him to get a goal. You're not expecting him to have an assist. You're expecting like a brace. You're expecting a hat trick. You're expecting a brace plus an assist. Like you're expecting him to come away with a haul. And if you're picking Messi and captaining somebody else, it's like you're saying, well, maybe he's not gonna really tear it up. And if he's not gonna tear it up, is dropping 10 plus million in a player that you're like, maybe. I mean, that's Benteke money. It's like, let me drop some money here. He might do well. Let's see what happens. But I'm not going to captain him. So it's not really automatic. It's just that whole train of thought is if I'm going to drop that much money, I'm expecting this kind of production.
Yeah,
and that kind of production is what I want to have my captain be on.
That's always
also.
It's just a strategy I was curious about. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I just still think he's the best player in the world. So if he's if he's gonna play, I'm gonna. Now I will say, this is a Sunday game. Am I right? Am I wrong?
Mm-hmm.
It's a Sunday game. I hate that. It gives me a lot of anxiety because I don't want to captain anybody else that day. I am gonna put a tiny asterisk to the Messi captain based on the midweek game. What does the midweek game look like? Does he play that whole game?
Yeah.
Now am I kind of nervous that he played that whole game? Am I going to look someplace else? Having my captain play in the last game of the week, like, gives me heartburn. It's not my favorite thing. But if it seems like he's a go, then he's my guy.
Yeah, I will not give all my options. I have 3, what I think pretty solid captain options this week. I'll share that again with the YouTube short later on in the week. But yeah, as I was just saying, Messi is my top pick for the captain.
Jason, who are we avoiding?
Yeah, seriously, I'll go ahead and jinx it, whoever it's going to be. So I should not pick an Atlanta player to captain. I don't want to jinx any of my own players. That would be a bad thing.
Sure.
I totally get on Messi. I think at times I overthink it, but I do think in this case he might not start in Houston if he plays in the midweek, and it's so hard to get a gauge. I mean, I've got the Diego Maradona poster behind me. I fell in love with the game because of Argentina. So Messi's always been that guy. But last year we saw for the first time ever Messi start to come to grips with, I can't play every game. I can't play 90 every game.
Yep.
I got to accept coming off the bench. I mean, if you know his history, like at Barcelona, it was one of the first things that Pep Guardiola learned. Like, don't sub him. Like, don't sub him out of games. Doesn't matter if he played 90 minutes in the midweek. Doesn't matter if he traveled back from Buenos Aires. Just do not sub him because he's going to get mad. Like, you can't do that. So I think now he's different. And I don't know yet how much he's going to play in these kinds of situations. So if he starts, if I feel like he's going to start, if he doesn't play a ton in the midweek, which I just don't think will happen, I think they're going to go for it. I think it's a really interesting game with Miami and Kansas City in that. I keep looking at potentially Ojeda if I don't go Messi. I really like Orlando against Toronto. I really like how involved he is in Orlando's attack. They're at home. If Columbus was at home, I'd go Rossi.
Yeah.
But I really like Ojeda's complete and utter involvement in everything that Orlando does well in the attack. So if Messi is at all a question for me in terms of him starting, I'd go Ojeda.
All right. Thank you so much.
Probably jinxed him. Sorry.
You may have.
We'll see. Fans.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. Let's wrap up everything as we always do with our plugs. Jason.
You can follow everything I'm doing at Longshoot. You can listen to my radio show on 92.9 The Game tomorrow night. Atlanta Soccer tonight, every Tuesday night at 10 o'clock. You can listen on the Odyssey app if you're not in the Atlanta area. If you listen on demand, it's on the Off the Woodwork podcast from the radio station. All of our clips from throughout the week from Atlanta United coverage, interviews, et cetera, off the woodwork. And also Soccer Down Here, a podcast network that I helped launch in 2017. We do high school games all over the metro Atlanta area, all over the state of Georgia. We have shows throughout the week with our team of folks. We cover all the Atlanta United training. So if you're preparing this week for Atlanta and Charlotte and you want to kind of get the skinny of everything, make sure you're following us at Soccer Down Here. And I'm at Longshoe. And thank you again for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure. Ashley.
I've learned a lot this week, so hopefully I'll have a better
good. I love it. Well, then we can have you back another time.
Yes, and hopefully I won't jinx anybody. I make no guarantees.
That. We appreciate it. I'll just continue to plug the MLS Fantasy Boss Discord community. It's such a great resource. It's such a great place to throw ideas out and listen to what other people are thinking. And so it's a really good area to learn a little more and also just see how right or wrong you are. That's what I love about it.
Absolutely. And of course, I know that we all are very sad that MLS has backed off on some of the promotion that they have given for the game, but MLS Fantasy Boss has stepped up, and with Wojo as our new content whip, we have articles coming out every week. We've got a strategy article coming out tomorrow for you to check out. MLSFantasyBoss.com. Definitely go there, see the articles. It's going to be so much fun. Patreon.com/MLSFI if you want to find out how to support the show. And that's your first foot into the Pro Rel League, which we're going to get that page finished, developed on the website soon, so everyone can see how those leagues are going. And we'll give a recap at some point. It was pretty wild this first week. So that's where you can find our content. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. And as always, good luck.